One night, a taxi driver told me this story, and I'm going to retell it from his perspective. I was driving down a highway late one evening when I saw a young woman standing by the side of the road waving me down. She wanted a ride, but warned me up front that she didn't have any money on her. She explained that she could pay me when we got to her home, where she had money. She seemed well dressed and polite, so I didn't hesitate to give her a ride. The whole way she stayed quiet, not saying a word. When we arrived at her address, she pointed to an apartment building and gave me the number of her unit, saying she'd be right back with the fare. I watched her head inside and waited. After about 30 minutes, I started getting frustrated. I thought, great, I've been scammed again. I decided to follow her into the building. Climbing the stairs, I couldn't help but think that she didn't seem like the kind of person who would do this. I reached her apartment and rang the doorbell. A man answered, looking like he'd just woken up. It was nearly midnight by then. I asked, "So are you going to pay me or what?" He stared at me, confused, and asked, "What money? For what?" I explained the whole situation, that I'd given a young woman a ride here, and she told me she'd grabbed the money from her apartment. The man's face changed, and he pulled me inside. He led me to the living room and pointed to a photograph on the table. "Is this the woman?" he asked. A chill ran down my spine. I nearly collapsed on the spot. It was her, no doubt about it, the same woman. Next to the photo was an unlit church candle, and flowers surrounded the picture. The man then explained that she had passed away less than a week ago. My heart dropped. He asked me where I had picked her up. I told him the spot, and he nodded solemnly. "That's where we buried her," he said. "Looks like my daughter came home." I recalled seeing a cemetery near the highway where she had flagged me down. Almost all the eerie, mystical stories I know were told to me by my mum on cold winter evenings, when the power would go out because of the fierce winds that often hit our town. One particular night remains etched in my memory. I must have been around 10 years old, and my mum, then 28, worked as a tax auditor in Chicago. She often had to travel for work, inspecting firms in various small towns. It was during one of these trips that she met a woman named Leah, who shared with her a story over coffee after a long day's work. Leah was a striking woman, around 35 years old, with a mysterious aura about her. From the time she was young, she dreamed of finding a great pure love, raising 3 children in a big, bright house with her beloved husband. But life, as it often does, had other plans for her. When Leah was 15, she became fascinated with tarot cards. She had a gift for it. Almost everything she predicted for her friends would eventually come true. After finishing high school, she didn't feel like going to college, so she took a job as an assistant manager at a local refrigeration equipment firm. The manager was her uncle, and he hired her without hesitation. It was there that she met Alex. He was a tall, handsome guy from the area, helping with deliveries and other tasks around the company. Leah fell for him the moment she saw him, but it seemed like he barely noticed her. He would mumble a greeting through clenched teeth, then disappear. Later, Leah learned that Alex had a girlfriend named Helen from a nearby village, and that he was saving up to marry her. But Leah's feelings for Alex only grew stronger. She could barely eat and spent sleepless nights crying into her pillow. She'd lay out her tarot cards, hoping for a different outcome, but they always told the same story. Alex would never be hers. Desperate, Leah confided in a friend who told her about a woman, a witch, who lived a 2-hour drive away. The witch, her friend said, could help with matters of the heart. Leah didn't hesitate. She went to see the woman, who wrote down a spell on a piece of paper and told Leah what to do. The witch's instructions were clear. Leah was to add a drop of her blood to Alex's food while reciting the spell. The very next day, Leah baked a cherry pie and slipped the blood into Alex's slice, whispering the spell as she served him. 2 months later, Alex stopped visiting his fiancée. Before long, he broke things off with Helen completely, much to the shock of everyone around them. He had been planning to marry her in just a few months. Instead, Alex came to Leah and asked her to live with him. Leah was overjoyed. She had never felt happier. They rented a small house in the same village, but as time went on, Leah began to notice that Alex never spoke of love. He never mentioned marriage or the children Leah had always dreamed of. There was a distance between them. He was cold, sometimes even cruel. Yet he couldn't bear to be away from her. He was drawn to her like a moth to a flame, even though he seemed miserable. Years passed, and Leah's dream of a perfect life remained unfulfilled. By now she was 30, and her youthful beauty had begun to fade. A mole on her nose had grown bigger and uglier, and with each passing day it seemed to take over her once lovely face. Meanwhile, Helen, Alex's former fiancée, had moved on. She was married with children. One night, Leah woke to find Alex missing from their bed. She found him outside, sitting on the porch, smoking and quietly crying. Leah put her arms around him, and he looked up at her, his eyes filled with unbearable sorrow. "Please, Leah," he begged, "let me see Helen. Just once, just for a moment. I can't live like this anymore. Please, I'm begging you." He tossed his cigarette away and ran back inside, leaving Leah standing there, stunned. It was only then that she truly understood the torment he had been living with. The next day, Leah resolved to find the witch again and undo the spell. That night, she went to bed alone. When she finally fell asleep, she dreamt of a child begging her for candy, crying because it had been taken from him. The dream left her unsettled, and when she woke up late the next morning, she went straight to the kitchen to make coffee. But as she walked into the living room, she froze in horror. There, lying in a pool of his own blood, was Alex, lifeless. My grandfather was born and raised in a small village in Wyoming. Besides him, there were 4 other children in his family. His father left to find work, so it was up to their mother to raise the kids on her own. She would leave early in the morning for work and return late in the evening, which meant all the household responsibilities fell on the children. That's just how life was back then. He grew up quickly, and by the age of 12, he was already a skilled hunter, able to handle a rifle and identify various animal and bird tracks. Near their home was a dense, dark forest. People avoided that forest because it was truly an eerie place, even during the day. The treetops were so tightly intertwined that sunlight couldn't break through. At night it was terrifying to hear the wolves howling just beyond the fence. But my grandfather thought, where there are wolves, there must be other game. One clear, frosty winter day, my grandfather decided to venture into that forest. It was winter, and they were almost out of food, so he hoped his luck as a hunter would turn. He set out at dawn even though he was scared. Wolves in those days would attack people. He wandered the forest for half the day, but when he realized he wouldn't find anything, he headed home. Somehow he misjudged the time and arrived late in the evening. As soon as he walked through the door, his mother rushed to him, crying. His 4-year-old brother had gone missing earlier that morning. She hadn't known what to think. Both her eldest and youngest sons were gone, and the cold outside was unbearable. The night passed with no sign of the boy, but in the morning they saw him walking towards the village from the direction of the forest. His clothes were filthy, but everyone was overjoyed to see him alive. His mother wept with relief. The boy explained what had happened. "I saw my brother leave and I followed him. I think everyone else was still asleep, so no one noticed. I saw him heading into the forest, so I followed, but then I lost track of him. It was really cold and I was so scared and hungry. Then, out of nowhere, an old man appeared from behind a tree. He took my hand and led me to a clearing where there wasn't any snow and there were all kinds of berries growing around. I ate, and then I asked him to take me home. Next thing I knew, I saw Mom and my brothers. It was hard for anyone to believe, but as proof, the boy pulled a handful of berries from his coat pocket. No one ever figured out who or what saved him, but I believe it was a forest spirit who took pity on the little boy. If you like this video, like it and subscribe to my channel.